The D700 for me is one of Nikon's classic cameras. It's one of the best cameras they've ever made for a whole bunch of reasons, and I'm going to discuss them in this video. In my time, I've used the D700 for weddings and for portraits. And in my early years of shooting weddings, it was my main camera for wedding photography. So I got a good amount of experience with it. The first thing though that will strike you about the D700 is how it's built. It is built so strongly and so well. It really feels professional in the hand. It's very ergonomic, it's very well thought out, and it showed at the time the experience that Nikon had with this kind of design of camera. At the time, I'd been using the 5D Mark I, but I wanted to move to Nikon for a variety of reasons, for weddings. And so I kept my 5D Mark I. I've still got it, it's here. This is it. But the D700 for me was about being able to get the shots in a more reliable manner. Now, it wasn't perfect, but it was a big step up in terms of performance for focusing. And that's what I really cared about at the time. But the D700 came along and took pretty much most of what the D3 had and stripped down just a few things. So you were down to one card slot, which did make a bit of a difference. But the gains and the thing that this camera brought were fantastic. Firstly, the real standout feature for me was the rendering from it. Not only did you have really nice skin tones and just a very nice color palette overall, but this was a non-Sony sensor, and I think that benefited them in many different ways. The other thing was just the overall rendering. This sensor suits very well a sort of a grainy, gritty style. It can do clean, it can do it, but when you push the files around, this is when you find out what a sensor's got. Is in the editing software, you find out when you pull these files around. And so recently I've just edited these pictures again with my portrait presets pack, which is available in the link in the description. And the files brought back that same joy to me of that grungy grittiness that you can get out of it that looks so pleasing, and it's so easy to get with this camera. The D700 is a chunky camera body with controls that are really well spaced out and very well thought out, and that very much makes you feel like you're using a camera that's been designed for professional work. And what I mean by that is everything is where it should be. It feels robust, it feels strong, but it feels well thought out, and it feels evolved, as if it's gone through generations and generations of design improvements to make it fit and work well for a professional. And the D700 has that in spades. Now you might be thinking, but it's only got a 12 megapixel sensor. How is that any good? You shouldn't worry about megapixels. I just don't think that anyone should worry about megapixels, and I don't think it matters what genre you shoot. I think you buy a camera for everything else that it brings you. At the moment, I'm testing out the Sony a7R5 that has 61 megapixels, but it was the only feature I just didn't care about. I would have bought it had it had 12 megapixels or whatever. I just don't care about the megapixel count, and you shouldn't either. In some ways, I think that I've noticed, and I've seen it from comments from users as well, that the lower pixel density cameras do have a little bit of a special look about them. That might well just be a coincidence, but it seems to me that once you get below 24 megapixels on a full frame sensor, there's just something about those pictures that just seem to work a little bit better than everything else. And the same is definitely true here. Please take out of your mind all of the ideas about what if I need to crop in 200% and all this kind of stuff. Just shoot in a way where you're thinking about what you're doing. Don't completely mess up your cropping. Shoot with some intention and you won't have any issues with 12 megapixels, because all of us that were shooting on these 12 megapixels cameras back in the day, we were not thinking, oh, I really want more megapixels. We just never worried about stuff like that. In fact, we thought 12 was quite a lot. And so the pictures that have come out have never been any different. They're still as capable as they were back then. And so for you, if you want to look at the D700, you have a massive array of lenses from Nikon that you can pair this camera with. In these pictures that I've been showing you, these were taken with the 51.8D. These D lenses use a screwdriver autofocus. This allows you to use some of the much older lenses, which maybe aren't as sharp, but the rendering of them is more interesting and lends itself to the type of editing that I've been showing you here more. Whereas if you want to get a cleaner look, you could switch it out for some of the G lenses and some of the more modern Nikon DSLR lenses, which by themselves are excellent. And the D700 at the price point it's at now in 2023, represents such amazing value for money that it's kind of silly to pass it up, because what you're getting that's really different from pretty much most of the cameras that followed it, with a few exceptions like the D4, maybe the DF, there's a few exceptions. What you were getting was just outstanding color production from this camera. You pair that with its usability and its tank-like robustness, you've got a really attractive offer there. And I think it gets overlooked by people because they're so focused on it having a low megapixel count. And yeah, the ISO, maybe 3200 would be a comfortable limit for people. Do you know what I do? I just don't care. I just shoot these things to as high as I want to go with it. And I just don't worry about it that much. People fuss too much over having clinically sharp and critically clean pictures, unless that's your job to produce stuff like that. Unless someone's paying you and says, hey, we need this to be as clean as possible. What's wrong with having a bit of character and a bit of expression and a bit of mood in your pictures? What's wrong with that? Why can't we embrace these things? We're so chasing the wrong things. Yeah, we're chasing the wrong things. And it's that same old thing. It's like, why people like playing records over CDs? It's because records sound better. Yeah, they're not crystal sharp clear. They're scratchy and they skip a bit, and it makes you feel like you're listening to something more organic. And it's the same with this. The process is more in contact and more in control. The shutter's loud. Who cares? Do you not ever just like that? Listen to this. I know this isn't the D700 because I don't have it anymore. That is I know it kind of seems petty, but the clunk and the feeling of using the camera is part of the experience. The experience of what we're doing is really important to the process of photography and our enjoyment of what we're doing. Silent shutters might be good for people that have social anxiety, for example, and I get that. But I think for everyone else, these kind of things shouldn't really necessarily matter, or they might be kind of part of the experience that we actually like. When a camera has a nice shutter sound, it's satisfying. I know that might seem silly, but it is part of it. And I think that the D700, it feels very raw. It's one of those cameras, it feels very raw. It's like this, it's in your face, it's loud, it's heavy, it's bulky, and it gets results of its own kind. And there's something for that. I think it's always fitted into that kind of mindset that this is just all out, going for it, loud, rough, but very competent and very capable. Brilliant thing is now, there's loads of them available online and they're relatively cheap. So you can just pick them up. So, why not grab one? If you're thinking about going for the D700 route, I think it's a really good option. If you found this video useful, consider buying me a coffee in the link in the description down below. It is much appreciated and it really helps support this channel. Give me a like if you enjoyed it and consider subscribing if you're new here. And I'll see you again in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye.